As we consider patents, especially involved in the metaverse space, one thing that we have to keep in mind is that there have been many challenges to software related patents. So a lot of the patents that are going to be covering the metaverse are going to be patents that cover underlying software that enables people to enter these virtual worlds, to engage in these virtual worlds, to communicate in these virtual worlds. Because remember, fundamentally, the metaverse is about creating an environment where people can socially connect. It's effectively a next generation type of social network, except you're immersed in this virtual world. And so underlying a lot of this technology is software. I would be remiss if we didn't at least consider the challenges that companies are going to be facing when they try to patent their software inventions in this space. So ultimately, they're going to have to address the many rejections that patentees are getting in software cases, namely patentable subject matter rejections around abstract ideas. A lot of software patents receive these rejections where an examiner basically says that they're not entitled to patent protection because their claimed invention is merely covering an abstract idea. And so what a lot of these companies are going to have to do to get around these rejections is that they're going to have to show that they solved some actual difficult, challenging computational problem or some sort of innovation in computer science, or perhaps computer vision or machine learning. They're going to have to demonstrate how they've solved a true technical challenge that resulted in a technical advancement. Now, in addition to sometimes having to show this in some cases, in these software patents, I predict that they're also going to have to narrow the scope of their claimed invention to actually include and describe and cover how they actually implemented the solution. So what's going to result, I predict, is at least in software cases, we're going to see claims that tend to be narrower in those that involve quote unquote purely software. However, patents where the patentee is also able to incorporate some hardware, perhaps in the lens, if there's some sort of technology in the headset, patents that cover the software and incorporate a bit of the hardware, I think are going to have a larger opportunity to claim more broadly, to get broader protection, and won't be stuck in the more narrow space, which I think a lot of software patents are going to be stuck, where they have to really claim and limit their claimed inventions to their actual software implementation down to the algorithm level in some cases. One thing to consider is if you're going to be filing software patents, especially in the metaverse space, it's a really good idea to describe in detail how your software actually works, how it's implemented. You can do this using flowcharts, using diagrams, showing input output, explaining some of the math that is behind some of your innovations. You want to focus in detail on explaining at least how to make and use one version of your claimed invention, and that often involves getting down into the details and explaining how the algorithm actually works. Now, this is going to ensure not only that you satisfy all the patentability requirements, such as enabling the claimed invention and providing written description to support it, but you're also going to help yourself, because if you're in the situation where you receive a quote unquote Alice rejection or a patentable subject matter rejection, you're going to have a lot of detailed disclosure that you're going to be able to pull into your claim if you need to, in order to try to traverse the Alice rejection. And although you're going to be limiting your claim to perhaps a specific implementation, at least you'll have that subject matter there. And hopefully you'll have a patent professional that can help you incorporate this language, but in a broad way, so that while it's maybe limiting the claim to a particular implementation, it does it in a way that still brings you a lot of value. It is narrower, but it's not tying you down to a specific implementation. And so you might still have opportunities there to get a valuable patent. Now, if you don't have that detail in the patent application, if you don't have flowcharts explaining exactly how the algorithm works, for example, then you're not going to have that opportunity at all. And so then you're going to possibly be faced with the hard decision of abandoning the application altogether. So one last piece of advice that I'll share with you also, if you are developing software in the metaverse space, another really good idea to consider is ask yourself, is there any hardware that you can incorporate in the application? So perhaps if there's a specific piece of hardware in the headset that is of particular use and importance in the implementation of software, you're going to want to make sure that you add that detail into the application, because that might make it so that you can obtain a very broad claim. Now, it's going to be limited to that particular piece of hardware, but the reality is that piece of hardware might be required for the software to operate. Now, what kind of hardware we're talking about? There might be a special kind of lens. There might be a special type of gyroscope. There might be a special type of input that's very unique to the particular problem that you're trying to address in the metaverse. So think about the interface, think about the human experience, think about different ways that the implementation can be done, and then ask yourself what's essential. So what's the essential piece of hardware? And then I would suggest disclosing that and discussing that in the application, because that might be something that you can pull into the claims to get around a possible subject matter rejection. I just wanted to remind everybody that this is not legal advice. In the metaverse, I highly encourage that you seek and get dedicated intellectual property counsel. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Amir with the DBIP Group. We're intellectual property professionals helping innovators protect their intellectual property.